Welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
And I'm your other host, Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me on all the socials at Misfit_Minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Each week, we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. Today, we are talking about the 1994 film Pulp Fiction.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Miramax Films asks the question, what do two hitmen, one girlfriend, a boxer, and a secret suitcase have in common? That's a good question. The answer, they're all part of the most electrifying film of the year. John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, and Bruce Willis. You won't know the facts until you see the fiction. Pulp Fiction, rated R. Starts October 14th everywhere.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. If you haven't seen it, what is wrong with you? Number one. Um, it is the intertwining story about two mob hitmen, a boxer, a gangster and his wife, and a pair of diner bandits across four tales of violence and redemption. To get this bullet train started, we will take the listeners back to October 14th, 1994. It was made for an estimated 8 million, which is fantastic because it's only about double today. So to imagine a movie like this being made for 16 million is
Mhm.
amazing. And it grossed a total of 213 back then, which is like 450, a kind of return I don't think
Mhm.
we wouldn't have seen in 30 years, right? Like,
Right.
I'm not sure any movie has ever had such a stellar return on investment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They
And
put in the domestic for this moving forward because that was the big takeaway on the special features was like this was the first independent film to reach $100 million domestic ever.
oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. I didn't even think
So
about, that it was sort of an indie. I hadn't even thought about that.
yeah, we'll talk about it, but, yeah, it broke that barrier, and it's definitely I mean, that's $8 million is not anything at all really for a movie to get a movie made,
No.
especially a 2.5 hour movie that has multiple locations and big name actors like this, so
Seriously,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, like, I think Sydney Sweeney's Immaculate was made for, like, 9 million, or that's what
Mhm,
they're, estimated to claim it was made for,
mhm,
and, the comparison is, it's impossible, you can't compare the 2 because
mhm,
for him to have done what he did with such a small amount of money, like you said, on such a large scale is wild.
mhm. Yeah, and we'll talk about why he was able to do that, how he was able to do that, I guess, more
Yes,
in a
I'm very
second.
excited. All right, that brings us to our first segment called Getting the Band Back Together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we take a slow motion look at the filmmaking choice that went into the film and all of the ass kickers responsible. Movie was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Talked about a lot on the show. It's got what 9 movies now. They're all great, pretty much. Good to great, I would say. So yeah, why don't you start us off, Shani B?
I mean, revisiting this movie is always thrilling to me just because it is so friggin' good.
Yeah.
I love a movie with seemingly unrelated stories that are actually ultimately connected.
Hmm.
That's such a fun storytelling device, just overall to me as a fan. The filmmaking is so pristine in this. It's so smooth, it's so thoughtful and deliberate. I love the framing that he uses. I love how he moves the camera, to do oneers in certain spots,
Hmm.
to really capture the idea of like what a character is seeing in a space, what he wants us to pick up from the environments. And I love the way that the editor, the filmmaking and the editor kind of work together to pass the motion between characters. Like he does
Yeah.
so many reaction shots. I
Let's talk
love
about
that.
some of our favorite scenes with this thing, I think, before we move on, just because there are so many, like, memorable ones, I think.
Yes.
I guess for me, when I think of, like, the most memorable oneers, I would have to be when they first enter Jack Rabbit Slims is, like, one of
Exactly.
mine, because
So good.
John Travolta even said on the special features that, like, that's one of his favorite 10 minutes of cinema, and he's like, "Not just because I'm in it, but just because I just enjoy it." Like, I don't even see myself as Vincent Vega. I see I just see the filmmaking, and he's like, I love the shot in particular where James Dean like passes him or whatever, and he's
Yes.
like he looks back, and he's just like kind of taking in this, nostalgic Americana, of pop culture, which is just QT's whole thing. That's one for me. What about you? What's one that
So good.
you like?
I mean, I guess that's the one that always sticks out to me the most as
Hmm.
well. But also just the way that he's like following characters when they're walking through places. It's not exactly a oneer, but when him and Samuel L. are walking through the apartment building in their first piece, when they're
Hmm.
going, to the apartment with the guys who have the briefcase, just the way that it's like you're coming down hallways with them,
Yeah.
you're kind of following them up. Just this idea of feeling like you're with these people and they're not just like going from room to room the way that maybe in other movies they like hit the elevator door and now they're in the apartment. It's like we're actually with them for all of these things.
Hmm.
And I just love that because we're really getting a sense of their
Yeah.
relationships.
And
I
just
think
like
that's what I
the stuff they're talking about too is like just what
yes.
would be the most mundane shit in any other movie, but
Yes.
it wouldn't even be in any movie because that'd be the first thing they would take out probably. Like, why do we need this
Yep.
conversation about
Mhm.
hamburgers in France? Like what do you call
We
a
do though.
cheeseburger?
But we really do. Yeah, this time in particular, I was like, man, the relationship definition is a strength of Quentin Tarantino's. He figures out how, in dialogue, to make you understand the relationship dynamics between the characters you see. They're not just talking about exposition the way that, like you're saying, producers will maybe trim things out. The writing is really tight and engaging so that there's a lot of talking, but that talking is actually explaining to you why these people are doing what they're doing, why they do it together, how they feel about each other. It's just
And
it
it's
was really interesting. It
ridiculous.
feels
I
so
mean, the first
authentic.
conversation I'm reminded of, like, I love in Reservoir Dogs, the like a virgin,
Yes.
conversation is, like, my probably my favorite part of that movie. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
funny. And then in Pulp Fiction, we get, like, their own version of it where it's like, "You ever give a foot massage before? I'm the foot fucking master," and they're having this
Yes.
ridiculous conversation about is a foot massage, like, sexual in by nature or not,
Right.
or like, eating pussy that is not in the same ballpark, it ain't the same sport.
The holiest of holies. It's
Yeah.
not the same. That's right.
And they're
Exactly,
both
right?
making good points, it's still and that's the thing about it is like it's not um making our allegiance with any one person. I guess Tarantino, the way he talks about it, which was interesting, was like there's 3 stories and there's a main character driving each story, he says,
Yes.
Butch's story, he's driving that, and then you got, Vincent, uh, and he's kind of driving the Jackrabbit Slims sequence, and
Yep.
then Jules is kind of driving kind of the last portion the most, which I think is
Yes.
I think is right on, yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I feel like it's masterful character development and relationship and exposition in writing. And we just don't, that isn't something we get the privilege of experiencing outside of Quentin Tarantino films. I know that like he has such a signature about this, the way that he writes and the way a story kind of unfolds when he's telling it. But it's just it's amazing because it really tells
Yeah.
you who these people are. And they're not being like, listen, man, this is how I see the world. They're saying like, the holiest of holies is different than this, which is basically saying this is how I see the
Yeah.
world. It's
Well,
just
just
so
like
much
what Mia
cooler.
says, like, this is not the average, regular, meaningless chit chat, like, which is like
Yes.
what you get in movies where it's like, it's just to get to the next scene. And it's like, wait, no, I want to hear
That's so
what the
boring.
conversation is. I want to hear like their takes on foot massages or whatever,
Yeah. Well, I want these people to feel like real people.
Yeah.
That is the big thing is that like even though I have some issues with the kind of people he always chooses to tell stories about,
Yeah.
they are real people. Like they're
Hmm.
real people. And that's a really hard thing to nail in filmmaking unless you have great writing and great acting or great acting that's going to help your writing do that. But here it's just like the perfect combination of both.
Yeah, and I guess like the other like oneer that there's a lot of them, but I really like in the when Mia ODs. and they're in the
Yes.
house, and he switches to like a oneer where it's just like you're in the chaos. There's no editing out, of it. So you're seeing Eric Stoltz look for his black book, and like he's screaming with his girlfriend, like you're not gonna
Philip
find
Patrick
shit
Barker.
there.
Yeah. Yes.
And like, oh man, it's just like so absurd and so like funny, like you're just like laughing at like, man, like I can't imagine what I would do in this situation, like I hope I never
Yes.
have to be in this situation.
Yeah, I
you
shouldn't
know
find myself here, but if I did, I have some ideas.
and just like their whole like, I think my favorite dialogue wise is just like the not the cattiness with Eric Stoltz and his girlfriend, but between John Travolta and him, where it's just like, no, you give her the shot, man, I ain't giving her the shot.
Yeah, the day I bring a girl to your house like this, I'll give her the shot.
And they're just like they become the nagging couple at each other, and it's just like, oh man, what's gonna happen? He's like, I'm kind of curious about that myself. Like, no, man, this isn't funny.
Yes, yes.
It's just, yeah, Tarantino has a way with writing. He just did an interview recently with Bill Maher, and he was just, he said it himself. He goes, yeah, man, my dialogue's the shit. He just
It
admitted
really
it, and it's
is.
like, and there's no one can deny that. It really is, and
And I
so I
think
think
when
it
we
really
see
stands out.
movies where people have more dynamic to them, where people have, this type of quality, I think we owe it to him and the way that he kind of has always led his storytelling with this type of dialogue. Because like
Yeah, we
occasionally we
talked
will
about Kill
see
Bill. We
movies.
did our Kill Bill review, and the
Yes,
dialogue is just as snappy
so
and
sharp.
smart there as it is here. And even like I guess credit to the actors too, because they're giving life into some of these lines that are iconic because of the delivery just as much as the line. Like I'm thinking of,
Yes,
Marvin, man, I don't even have an opinion. Why did he say it like that? I don't know, but it makes it so much funnier.
yes, yes.
Or my name's Paul and that's between y'all. Like all these like random.
Just yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, things that again are so human and so authentic that you can try to write them that way, but then you need the actor to be able to lift in that
Mhm,
way. And that's a strength of Quentin Tarantino's too, is like I can't really think of someone who's been miscast in any of his movies.
mhm.
Like even if there are characters I haven't really liked necessarily or like actors that like are not my favorite that are there, I still can't necessarily be like, but that's because they were the wrong choice for this
No.
character. You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
actually do that,
Well, I think
which I
it's
think is
because
really surprising.
he does a lot of rehearsals, and like pretty much all the actors on the special
Mm,
features were like just smitten, and some of the interviews were done like years later, some were like done during the production or whatever, but like
okay.
the whole time they're just talking about like it sucks that leaving a Tarantino set because you'll never have as much fun ever again. We do
Yeah.
rehearsals, it feels like theater more.
Yeah.
Travolta was even saying that like he like the collaborative effort of it, of like he suggested things like, for example, in the famous dance at Jackrabbit Slim's, the twist,
Yes.
Tarantino just was obviously paying homage to like Godard film called Band of Outsiders,
Mhm.
which is what his production company is an ode to. It's A Band Apart is the French title.
Okay.
Anyways, like there's a dance sequence in that where they're just doing a twist in a line. It's like these two gangsters and female at the center of it. And so he basically just wanted that type of feel. And Travolta was like, well, I grew up with the twist. There's other moves we could throw in here. And he's like what? And he's like, well, the Batman when they're doing that, and like like the scuba diver stuff, like all
Yep. Right?
and he's like, and so Tarantino basically like, as a fan of Travolta, like we all are, just kind of let him do his thing. And at the end of it, he said that Tarantino was like, I just have to say, man, we've been shooting this for like 13 hours of you and Uma dancing, and you have captivated us for 13 hours. Like
Thank you.
our jaws are on the floor. You know,
Yeah, yeah, he's a director who loves filmmaking, but also loves actors, also loves
Mhm.
writing, also loves story. Like
Yeah.
he really loves what he's doing, and not just because he's like a tortured artist,
And he
you
knows
know?
what audiences wanna see. We know Travolta as Saturday Night
A
Fever,
dancer.
as
That's right.
Grease, as a dancer, as a performer, and so I love too in that there's very little, like, camera movement or cutting in that. It's just like we're seeing both of their full bodies doing the moves, which seems like such a weird comment, but, like so many movies like chop the fuck out of their dancing or their action, and we complain about
Yes.
it all the time.
That's why I
It's
wanted
just
to
like
point out how deliberate the passing of the action is in the
yeah.
editing and in the filmmaking. Is that like he is really thinking about where he wants your eyes to go. He's not trying to like manipulate that by trimming it on you. He's moving it. He is, capturing reaction shots. And I do want to talk more about that scene when we get into the actors. But
Yeah.
two other sequences I really really like. I think it is sort of a one or two when Butch is going back to his apartment to get his
Mhm.
watch,
Yeah.
and
It
we
is.
like follow him through
Yeah.
the field or the lot or whatever and get to the apartment building. I
Very
like that a
intense.
lot because it's like who's all around, such
Yeah.
a fun vibe. And I really like the sequence when Travolta shoots up. It's just like lots of good
Mm.
inserts, taking you through
Yeah,
this process.
there was a film critic, like, discussion that was, like it was decent on the special features, but there was one guy in particular, I liked what he said about that, where he said that, like, there's no sex scene in this movie, but that is the closest thing to a sex scene is, like, the way he shoots the heroin and shooting up,
Yes,
like,
and then
it's
he's
just
so cool
yeah,
after, right? He's so
and he
calm and
and
relaxed
that's what he
after.
said, he's like, that him driving with that rear projection is like a cigarette after sex, like, he's just like you look at his expression.
Yeah,
I
he's
guess
like,
that was one thing I noticed, like, this time around that I don't know if I thought about as much as, like, from that sequence on, Travolta is acting kinda strange with Mia, you
that
know
yep.
you
That's
know,
why I wanted to
and
bring up that, like, when they're in that dance sequence, you can see he's on heroin and she
yeah,
is on coke. You can
yeah,
see it in their performances.
and it's just like it's a very, like, subtle thing, I don't know, like, what he did to, like, get that out of there, but it's just, like, the way he delivers some of the lines and the way he's, like his body is moving, it's just
Yes.
like it's
Yes.
like, "Oh, this guy is high on heroin," like, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. This guy's
Like
fucking hella laid back right now.
yeah.
Yes. And, she is doing an exact mirror of that, except
With
cocaine. And it's
coke,
sort of like,
yeah.
yeah, you can really see that. And I was thinking about that so much more this time around.
Mhm.
Just again being like, that's the strength of these movies is like these actors are not just able to like collaborate and get what Quentin Tarantino's kind of going for or asking for, but
Yeah.
they're also able to like actually mirror that in a really authentic way so you believe all of it. Like,
Mhm.
again, every actor in this is so good.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I wanna talk about the performances because there's so many in here. I know it's gonna take a
Yes,
while, but
got
I
a
guess the
million.
one thing I wanted to mention before we move into that is just the music. Tarantino always has,
Yes,
like, the best music, but, like,
best music.
I also like this, title sequence is, like, iconic, just, like, the letters, the changing of the radio station,
Yes,
to Jungle Boogie, you're just like, "Wait, what is this?" Like, the first time you see it, you're like, "What is happening?"
yes,
Like, he's demanding your attention from the titles, like, you need to pay
love
attention,
it.
the shit's about to start happening, even, like, the conversation is not the boring, mindless chit chat that you're used to, you know?
Exactly, like, he doesn't need a score because he is scoring the movie with real music that matches the story, that
Mhm.
matches the characters, like, it's, one of those things where it's sort of like, how in movies when they do dance sequences, but they haven't, like, secured the rights, they're like, "Actors, dance as if it's any song," and it's sort of
Yeah,
like, what a disservice that is to storytelling. Here,
I
it
know.
almost feels like he's like, "I'm gonna advocate for these to be the songs we use so you can really actually embody that performance."
And, like, again, Reservoir Dogs, he showed this with, like, Stuck in the Middle with You, just completely changing the meaning of that song forever and
Fucking
ever.
perfect.
And in this one, I don't know, I guess the one I noticed this time that I really liked was, the Jackrabbit Slims, I'll just come out and say it, that's my favorite of the whole
Okay.
I
Okay.
absolutely love that scene, I love their chemistry, and there's like this guitar riff that keeps playing like as they're talking, where it's like vroom, 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 like in the background, and
Yes.
it's like I
Yes.
don't know what that. I don't know if that's a
Building
song or if
building
it's
tension in the
yeah,
background.
but it just made everything. I'm like, this feels like a western. It's like these two people like facing off, in this conversation.
It is. It
Who's gonna come
is.
out on top, and Mia, this woman is dangerous. We know from the story from the beginning, you can't get too close to her. But Travolta is
Yes.
like also this hitman that's like, I'm gonna figure shit out myself. I'm not gonna listen to the stories. I'm gonna see what's what,
Right, right. I can handle myself. And
Yeah.
I think to your point, another song that really stands out to me and I think is so well placed is before she's going to do the heroin and OD, like try to
Oh
snort the
yeah,
heroin and
that's a
OD,
great one.
that song, Girl, You'll Be a Woman
Hmm.
Soon, comes on. So she goes from being this like, I'm this actress who's like playful or whatever, who is like probably naive, but
Yeah,
after tonight, I'm not going to be that way anymore.
and I
And I
like
feel like
it.
that song is so well placed because it's kind of deranged-ish, but not, but
Hmm.
like also fun.
I also like to like that where I think leading up to that where she's like almost like a DJ where she's talking to him on the intercom.
Yes,
And again,
yes.
Travolta's just like zonked out of his mind. So he's like looking around like
Epic, epic.
the
He
voice
really
of
is sort
God.
of like, where's that coming from? Yeah. Yeah, like everybody feels so real.
It does. Yeah, they talked about that critics discussion. There was a huge portion of that was dedicated to like the realness of the details of the characters mixed with the surreal touches that Tarantino puts in here, like the rear projection, the black and white rear projection, or
Yes.
like the square, you're don't be a square, like all um these touches that like they're very inspired by like the French New Wave. That's like anyone that loves Tarantino, like this movie and like those touches in particular, I highly recommend Godard and the French New Wave because like that's kind of where it all started, to be honest. Like in the
Mhm.
50s, like where Godard was just like, there's no rules to the film. We can just do whatever, like we can just
Yeah, we
try
can
we
try
can
whatever we
try
want.
things and see how it works. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of the New Wave, and Tarantino definitely took a lot of inspiration from many different films, but you can
Yeah,
definitely
created a
see
new wave of
the
himself, of his
yeah.
own in the US.
And I think I even put in a paper one time on when I was writing about that um, Mia Wallace looks very much like a French New Wave prototype, with
Yes.
short black hair and the cigarette,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
so yeah. Let's go get into the actors here because there's a lot of performances to talk about in our next segment called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is where we take a look at all the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles and sometimes their real muscles for us movie buffs. This is a stacked cast. We've got John Travolta, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, B. Willies, who, brings us into this category, Ving Rhames, Harvey Keitel, Rosanna Arquette, Eric Stoltz, Christopher Walken, Uma Thurman, and of course, Samuel L.
Whew.
Jackson,
Yeah,
right? Like
there's
a mouthful.
Yeah. Again, a lot I watched the special features. I won't get into like every single actor and their story, but I will bring up what I think were the two best stories that came out of
Yes,
the special feat,
please.
and that was Travolta and Sam Jackson. They were so especially Sam Jackson is just a great interview. He's just so funny and
All time.
carefree, dropping the F bomb like no one else. Uh,
Love it. I love
um,
that about him.
and Travolta's was like sweeter. So I guess we'll start there. Travolta, he like opens up the special features and he's like, I met Quentin and we hang out at his house or my house, whatever. And Quentin like professes his love for John Travolta to him basically that like you're my favorite actor. You're as a kid growing up, Saturday Night Fever and Grease, were like all timers, and then going into film, like Brian De Palma's Blowout is like one of Tarantino's favorite movies,
Of course.
and Travolta was just like, wow, like I don't know what to expect, like this is a lot,
Yeah.
and then Tarantino kind of goes into like where his career is now and kind of like slightly like disappointed. And Travolta's like, okay, I don't know, like what is going on with this guy. And then Tarantino's like, gave him basically 2 projects that he was thinking of making.
Okay.
One was From Dusk Till Dawn, and that's the one he was really pushing for Travolta to do.
That'd be
And
wild.
I know. And then he brought up Pulp Fiction, and Travolta was definitely more into the Pulp Fiction one, and Tarantino was like, "Well, why aren't you into this other one? Like, there's something that's keeping you." And Travolta's
Yeah,
just like, "I'm just not into vampires, man." You know, like
straight up.
I'm
Straight
just
up.
not. And then the reason Pulp Fiction he didn't want for him was just because Michael Madsen was supposed to play that part. He had
That's
already
right. That's his
cast.
guy.
Yep. And so he's like, "Don't worry, we'll work on a project one day." And
Okay.
then I guess he like went back and reconfigured it around that conversation with Travolta where he was like, he's got this analytical side that I want to put into a hitman that I really
Yes.
wasn't considering before. Like
Right.
during because I guess that night was like a 7 8 hour, like they spent literally all night together.
Hanging
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally broing out. Okay.
Yeah. And so that's how that happened. The Sam Jackson one was a little funnier, and like again, he does not care. He does not give a fuck. Like Sam Jackson was like,
Goat.
he auditioned for Reservoir Dogs. He's like like pretty much the only black character in there. I that he auditioned for that part, didn't get it. And then I guess like bumped into Tarantino and the producers, and they remembered him, and they're like, "What'd you think of the film?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought it was good." And he's like, "What do you think about the guy that got your part?" And Sam Jackson's like, "Well, I think it would have been a better movie if I was in it."
Straight up. That's what's up.
And then Tarantino's like, "Don't worry, I'm writing for something for you right now." And then Sam Jackson's like, "What?"
And
Like,
I will for the rest of your career.
yeah, like you remembered me basically. Like he didn't even think you remembered him. And so then and then he gets asked to audition for Jules again. And he's like, "What the fuck? He told me he wrote this part for me. Like, why am I having to audition?"
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah. And so he said that was like a learning lesson for him as a young actor, that like you can't trust just on the words of someone saying something, even if it's like sounds
No.
good. And
No.
then and then he auditioned. He said he was pissed already at that. And then one of the producers came up to him and goes, oh, he's like, tries to introduce himself. He goes, "Oh, no, you don't have to introduce. I'm a big fan of your work, Mr. Fishburne, Lawrence Fishburne."
No. That's one of the other black guys.
And then Sam Jackson goes, "Now I'm really fucking pissed off."
Yes. Yes.
And so I guess he auditioned, and he just blew that kind of intensity, maybe, that fury, that
He
he
is.
talks about. He
s-
brought that to the audition, and like that basically cemented, like, no, this is Jules. There's
This is
no
who
other
Jules is.
person that can capture that. And I guess they told him after his audition that like we didn't know how the movie was going to end yet. And then when you did the diner scene where when you read that out, you just gave us our ending. So like,
Yeah.
thank
We
you,
knew. Yeah. Yep.
which is
It's
kind of the
true.
perfect ending. You get Sam Jackson doing a monologue, you got your ending right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is my favorite performance of his. It's like an all-timer. He's just the most
Which is
captivating
crazy
person
because
in this
like you could
entire
pick out
film.
any Tarantino movie, and like I love him
Yeah.
in The Hateful Eight. He's like the main character in The Hateful Eight, and like I'd
Yep.
put that up there, or like in
Dude, I like him
Django,
in Jackie Brown even. Like, let's
Jackie
go.
Brown, yeah.
Yep.
So him and this is where their relationship started, and it's just you know
So
been
good.
great to see over these years, like their relationship and what it's brought in all of these performances, I think. But this is
So
probably the
good.
iconic one if we had
Yeah.
to pick.
Yeah, I mean, people
Yeah.
still quote it. People are always thinking about it.
Yeah, what
Um,
does Marcellus Wallace look like? Does he look like a bitch? Do they speak English and what? Like there's so even in that one
yes.
scene there's
Say
so
that one
many.
more time.
Yeah.
So good. So,
That
so
is
good.
one tasty burger. Like he puts some sauce on every single line that makes it so good.
Yeah, even the way he says, like, oh, from McDonald's, even
Yeah.
the way that he pronounces certain words
Yeah.
is so good.
Look at the big brain on bread. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my
um,
God.
I guess the other funny part with Sam Jackson is like Tarantino initially wanted like a huge afro wig, like a
Okay.
70s
Yeah,
kind of
something like really campy or whatever.
blaxploitation kind of thing. And so
Right.
they sent a PA to go pick out the wig, and it was a white woman, I wanna say, and she didn't know the difference, and so
Good.
she got the Jerry curl
I'm
wig.
glad she got the Jerry curl. It's so good.
And Sam Jackson said that too, like, he said, like, Quentin was like, "No, this isn't the right one," and then Sam Jackson's like, "Wait a second now, NWA is popular right now.
That's right.
This is what the gangbangers look like now. They're
That's
bringing
right.
back the Jerry curl, and it's
And
so
he is a
great."
sophisticated hitman,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And yeah, just that's its own character in a way, like the way that he's playing with it and like making sure it's all smooth, picking at it.
Yes, it's true.
um, yes, I mean some of the other ones though, Uma Thurman again, that's my favorite
So good.
character interaction. Her as Mia Wallace, which again, in other movies, the boss's wife is just a nothing part, it's
Yes.
super forgettable.
Yeah, it's like we see more of her than the boss,
Yeah,
in this movie,
exactly.
you know?
And it's like I love how again, because they're doing it, these different scenes together, we get this knowledge of just somebody gave her a foot massage and like died and like not died for it, but is never going to be the same.
Right.
Like is
Right.
severely injured. And so then there's that tension, and then she just has an interesting way of looking at the world, and it's just like her and Travolta have this really great chemistry. And he even said that too, where he's like, I didn't even feel like I was acting at all. Like I just was reacting to the scenes and the dialogue, yeah, but you get that. I remember I went into a diner similar to that one time in my life. It was like something at Disney World or something where
Let's go.
you got to sit in one of those like classic cars and they were playing like old school, I want to say like sci-fi movies from like the 50s or something.
Fun.
Like, and I was just like, and so I don't know, maybe that's why that's my favorite, but it's just like it's such a nostalgic thing. Like not even just the characters, but just like the way they're talking to each other, and you get all these Buddy Holly and Marilyn Monroe and everything.
And they all look really good.
Oh
Like, they're
yeah, for
really
sure.
good comps. They truly do look like the people they're supposed to be looking like.
Yeah, exactly. Steve Buscemi coming in as Buddy Holly.
Yes, yeah, except for
Random
Buscemi. He doesn't
cameo.
exactly. He's not a perfect comp, but he's such a great
Yeah.
it's so great that he gets to show up here. Because I do feel like this is also early in filmmakers' careers where, like, the same actors are going to always appear in Quentin Tarantino's films in one way or
Mhm.
another. Not necessarily every time, but for the most part, like, he too has a troupe.
Yeah. Um, Bruce Willis again, like just randomly in here where it's like that's a leading man. That's a leading movie star, Bruce Willis, and he's playing like the third build kind of in this movie,
Yes.
like
Yes.
it's
And
so
he
nuts.
has already become that kind of movie star. Like
Yeah.
like people know that
This is
about him.
post Die Hard. Yeah, this is post
Yes.
Die Hard. Yeah, I guess for the Travolta, this was like a revitalization, even though he done like the Look Who's Talking movies, I think already at this point, and those are huge. But like nothing
Right.
where people were like taking him serious as an actor. I guess was like
Right.
a way to put it. Bruce, I guess this is kind of a weird period too. Where like it wasn't the best. Like his
Yeah, I guess
80s
he
were.
yeah. Yeah, there people were trying to like he had to kind of fight to be seen as like the cool guy, even though people knew
Mhm.
he was like I feel like studios were always trying to give him shit. Or
Yeah,
like producers were always trying to give him shit. And I do feel like he plays such a cool kind of boxer in this
Butch.
because
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And that
yeah.
scene with Christopher Walken, that is just an amazing
Just
scene
4 pages.
monologue.
They showed it in the special features, 4 pages of straight dialogue, like,
That's
insane.
fantastic. Yes. The things that
And
he's saying
only
to this
Christopher
kid.
Walken, like, would deliver it. Like, we talked about this in our True Romance episode, like, you need a
Yes.
monologue to be interesting and off kilter, call Christopher Walken
Christopher
because
Walken's got you.
yeah.
For 5 years, he wore this watch up his ass.
He's like no, he pauses too, that's my favorite part, he goes like, "Up his ass."
Right, but he still uses the term
Yeah.
"wore the watch."
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
it's so good.
It's really funny,
Um,
like, it's in a way that I guess I don't know if I've felt before, but just was like, "And then he died of dysentery, but that's
and then
beside the point."
yeah, I put this watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess that's an interesting thing here too, is that, like, you get to have this whole other scene that is about Butch, but Christopher Walken gets to come and do this exposition work and tell you this story that again
It's like the
explains the
only
character.
flashback, but it works. But and then you
It
get
works
this
so well.
the only other scene that's kind of like analogous to that would be when there's like the what if Bonnie came home and they're all carrying the body and they're like, oh,
Yes.
like again, but just like playing with the medium. You know, you can have a flashback and
So
a
good.
what if scenario. Um, Man, Ving Rhames as the big bad. You know, I love that you don't even see his face for like a
Yeah,
long
just
time, just the
yep.
band-aid,
Yep.
which was from a cut or a scar, I guess, that Ving Rhames actually has, but it
Oh,
prompted fans to
yeah, the
speculate that
theory
he's the devil, that he has a 666 on the back, of
back
his neck,
there.
and
Yeah, I
that's why the
heard that's like where
combination is 666. Yeah.
yes, because it's like his soul's in the briefcase and they
Yeah.
jacked it from there or
Yep.
whatever. Yeah, stuff that I was like, I don't even know about the lore, but I love that it exists.
Eric Stoltz got cast basically just from bumping into Tarantino again and again and like kind of working in and
Poor
around each
Stoltz.
other. And Tarantino says, "I got two guys in robes in this movie, and I want you to play one of them." So he was either going to
That's
play Jimmy or the drug dealer. I'm
he
so
would have
glad he
been
got the
perfect as either or.
I'm so glad he got the drug dealer part though because he
Yeah, a
is
little bit
so
bigger.
perfect at that, at that
Yeah, what
part.
I was making the joke too, like when I saw your note about how this is like a revitalization for Travolta's career at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, you think Stoltz thought he was going to get the same treatment? Because I know he's had a
Oh.
hard time in Hollywood.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't but I guess he had nothing but nice things to say. He was just like he
Yeah,
said, like, meeting Travolta, he was like, "It's always funny when you meet a leading man because they are never their persona." And
yeah,
what
they're
that's what he
never what
said
you
about
expect.
Travolta, you know?
Yep,
Because
yep.
they had this whole sequence together, which might be my other favorite sequence is, like, the adrenaline. I guess that goes into the Jackrabbit Slims portion,
Yes.
but,
So,
it's
so
just
good.
so intense. I had a teacher one time, funny enough, who taught me French New Wave, who told me that when she saw this movie, I can't remember if she said she threw up or she passed out. It might have been passed out. She had to go outside and she was like, yeah, weak at the knees or whatever from
It
this
is a
scene.
great sequence.
And there's like some legend lore to this, like they when they showed it at the New York Film Festival, that somebody like they said a heart attack during the scene, but it turns out it was just he was just like diabetic or something and just needed like
Yeah,
a
just a
Coke or
little
something.
low blood sugar. Okay,
Yeah.
cool, 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 cool.
And so but it's like it goes to the lore of the movie, like it's so intense it'll give you a heart attack, like
It
that
is
type of thing.
really visceral.
Yeah.
Something I definitely noticed was the sound design this time. Like before, the sound of obviously the syringe kind of busting through her breastbone, but the way that they are tapping at her breastbone, you
Yeah.
can hear it. They give you
Yeah.
Foley to make you be like,
Yeah.
hear that
This
like
is
this bone
hard.
is really
This is a
thick. Yeah.
hard and he says
Yeah.
you gotta punch through the breastplate. He says that, yeah.
And all I could imagine was like, God, what must be the recovery of something like that? Like, she's driving back and they're all
Yeah.
like, let's not tell Marcellus about what happened or whatever. But I was like, I can't imagine what it must be like to wake up as her the next day and be like, oh my God, the pain in my
Yeah. Yeah,
chest.
that might be an unanswered question. What does Marcellus think of the fat ass bruise on her chest?
Right.
The
Is he
next day,
not
like,
curious about
what?
that? Yeah.
Where did you get that from? Because I don't know.
Oh
Um,
man, but it's true. Again, like perfect casting no matter where you go. For Stoltz in this small
every
scene,
scene,
fucking
every part,
yeah,
him,
Harvey
him
Keitel
Roth,
as like the fixer guy. I love him in this,
him
like
Roth, and Amanda Plummer as the
oh
Honey
my God,
Bunnies.
yeah,
You
their
know?
sequences. Yeah, like I'm not a huge Amanda Plummer fan because she's
Oh,
so
but
like
she's
erratic
so
to
good
me,
in this,
but that
though.
works. Right,
She's
exactly.
so great.
Here, it's perfect. So I married
Yeah.
an axe murderer. It's perfect.
Yep.
I can get
Exactly.
behind those castings.
I guess Tarantino
Um,
just wanted her in the part too because he said it would be funny to see her with a gun that would be bigger than her, like holding a gun, like.
Yes, yeah, her frenetic energy in that scene is so good because it perfectly balances out with how cool Samuel L. Jackson's gonna be and how like
Be cool.
resigned
Tell
Tim
that bitch
Roth.
to be
You
cool.
tell that bitch to be cool. It's true. But like, Tim Roth is really like, I too am sinking down, and she's
Yeah.
just like up high and
Oh,
screaming.
her performance in that is just like it's one of the best for me in this movie because
So
she's like
good.
in one scene she's frothing at the mouth, literally spit coming out,
Yeah, you can
like
see it.
yelling at people.
Yep. Yep.
Don't you motherfuckers move! Like going, and you're like, whoa, when did this come out of this little lady?
The
Like,
hell's this lady doing?
yeah. And then when Sam Jackson comes and just takes over the situation, she just completely reverts back to like
Yeah, I
little
want to go
girl.
home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta go pee.
I want to go home. Oh my God, it's true. It's true. Again, right? So much authenticity and not even that much dialogue needed.
And like I just love that I had to mention where he's like, we gonna be three Fonzies. What's Fonzie like? Cool.
He's cool. So good. So smart. So smart.
And the last one I just want to mention because we have to, Harvey Keitel's the wolf just coming
Exactly.
in for his
I
one
love him
scene.
as the fixer. Oh my God.
Yes.
So,
Oh
so
man,
good.
just taking over the situation where you thought Travolta Jackson were smooth relatively as hitmen. No, this guy makes them look like school children,
And it
in
looks
one
like
scene.
he's like sitting Shiva when they first get
Yeah,
a hold of
yeah.
him,
I'm like,
you
where is he
know?
at a funeral? What is
Yeah,
going
because it's 8 a.m. in the morning.
on?
So like
Yeah.
wherever he is, something is happening and he's so well dressed.
I
Yeah,
noticed
just
this
so
time in
good.
that scene too where he's writing down, he's like, Vincent White,
Wait.
parentheses, White.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he's like, I'm not gonna get tricked.
So then, like, when he gets there, he goes, Yo, Jules, and guess that makes you Vincent. You're like, oh, this guy does
Yes.
his homework.
Yeah. Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, I noticed he also doesn't actually touch Eric Stoltz's phone. He has like a hanky that he uses to hold the phone
Oh,
when he's on the
I missed
call.
that. I missed that.
I love that him and Julia Sweeney like go off together and they're like on a date, I guess.
Even,
And
I mean,
and
and that's like the thing where, like, even like that little scene has like a line my friend used to say all the time where he'd be like, just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character. Like there's just
yes.
like the smallest parts and the smallest characters can have these like great lines because they're in this movie.
Yeah,
And
really
that's
lasting
why
stuff.
Tarantino got all these actors because the script was so strong and
Yep,
everyone wanted to work with the guy that did Reservoir Dogs.
of course.
And so yeah, that led us to Pulp Fiction.
Yep. Again, a lot of great actors in this movie, and everyone is appropriately and well cast and does such a good job, no matter how big or small their presence is in the story. So yeah. All right, that brings us to our next segment, the need for speed.
Pain don't hurt.
In this segment, we do what the Oscars don't, honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. What do you got, Shani B?
All right. Well, I love the car crash when Marcellus is just walking by with like a pink donut box and some coffee as Butch is, leaving his apartment. I read somewhere that was like an ode to how Marion Crane sees her boss
I
in
was just gonna
Psycho.
mention that. Yeah, if
Okay,
you
yeah.
watch
And I was
that,
like, oh, I love that. What a great way to be like, yep, they should not
yeah.
cross. And then, when he tries to, when he runs him over and gets like totally railed in the intersection, and all the women come to
Yeah, if
his
only
defense and
Marion
they're
had
like,
Crane
oh
had
my
run her
gosh.
boss over.
Right, what a different story Psycho would be. Oh my gosh, so
Yeah, if
good.
you look at just the original, like, I'm sure there's someone on YouTube's done it already, but the way that they're edited, especially where it's like the boss is walking, notices, turns his head, cuts to the person in the car just like looking around, and then finally realize it's cut the exact same way, like as Psycho. So
So
definitely a
good.
nod. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And all the women coming around too is so funny. Being like, oh, we all saw that. I'm happy to Kathy Griffin being there, being like, hey, I'll stick around
Yeah.
and I'll tell the police what I saw.
That
So good.
maniac over there, I felt bad for that girl that just got shot for trying to help Butch
Just right in the
too.
hip.
That
Yeah,
was, oh
totally
man,
got one.
dude,
Yeah,
that's
because then when
like,
he's like chasing him, he's so disoriented from being hit by a car,
yeah,
so he's just shooting kind of anywhere.
they're both
Just a
like
great,
limping, like chasing after each other.
such a good sequence. Bruce Willis's face is so fucked up
Oh
from the
man,
accident.
his nose, yeah,
Yeah, great sequence, good stunt. I love when they're going over to Stoltz's with Mia because she's OD'd, and Travolta just drives like straight up onto the lawn, like almost into the house. It's
yeah,
not like a super destructive stunt, but it's like played both for laughs and also you're sort of like Yeah, I don't know what I would do either if I could just like reasonably drive when I'd be trying to get this gal to a situation where I
Every
could save
second
her.
counts. Yeah, you
Exactly,
can't park.
exactly. And then I think my favorite is not really a huge stunt, but I just love the sequence of like the bullets that miss Sam Jackson when he's holding the briefcase.
Yeah.
That guy, the other Arquette, I think Alexis is the Arquette that comes out of the bathroom. Tarantino
Rosanna.
must know all the Arquettes.
Or no, oh yeah, I
Um,
know what you're talking about. Yeah, the other one.
yeah,
Yeah.
fires all those bullets, and it's just such a great reveal when Sam Jackson turns around and you realize that there are 3 bullets that absolutely would have went through him, and they look different in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So even though
Yeah.
we don't get too much, visually, the stunt, the storytelling stunt is what sticks out to me the most there.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I have some of the same ones. I definitely had the car crashing into the house just because it's such a funny visual gag. It's like you
It's so
get
good.
again the way they shoot it, like Eric Stoltz is like, "What's going on?" Everyone's waking up. What the fuck is happening? He like opens the drapes, and so then you just see the front yard and the car just going across the front yard, and you hear the crash. You don't see the actual crash,
Yep.
but again, just a funny physical comedy gag. Number two, yeah, another like the Marcellus crash, and then just like the ridiculous fight and bullet chase. Like, you know what I mean? They're shooting at each other. Then they get in the store and Butch is like punching the shit out of them.
Yes. Oh,
You think it's gonna be over, and
he's
then that
like
leads into the GIMP sequence, which is we haven't talked about, but
just
just
wild.
what other movie would just have that just at the back
Truly
end
horrifying. Yeah, send
intended?
up to
Uh,
Deliverance, like a real send up to Deliverance. My
Yeah.
God.
Just wild shit. And then my favorite one has to be the adrenaline shot. Like we kind of talked about it a lot already, but the way it's
So
edited,
good.
like you get the close up of the needle with the adrenaline dripping out of it. You look at all their faces, and then when she finally wakes up and she's just like this zombie, like ah, and
Yeah.
it's like
And she's like, it's
like
so good.
and there's just a random chick on the couch, just like with her bong the whole time, with no words.
Yep.
Where can I get that part in a movie? Like, and just be in a classic like Pulp Fiction for the rest of time, just like in the
Right.
background.
Just
I would be
collecting the
happy with
minimum
that.
royalty
No
check. Yeah.
lines, no lines, just happy in the background. I get to hang
Perfect.
out with Travolta and everybody for a day. Oh
Epic.
man. So yeah, those are mine. Let's go to our next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where we'll take a look at the movie's body count and see who bit the dust the hardest. All right. What are your top 3 kills?
I have the the Butch scene and Marcella scene we talked about where Butch has this moment of clarity, as alcoholics say, where he's looking for the weapon of like, well, first he's like, I'm out,
Yeah.
I've escaped, and then he's
Right.
like, am I really gonna leave this man to be raped and tortured and whatever else they're gonna do to this
Yeah.
guy?
I
And he's
already
like,
fucked this
I
guy
can't
over
do it.
so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe he's seeing an opportunity for himself, but and then that's where it leads him to he's got like a chainsaw. He's like, oh, this might be good. The baseball bat, he's like testing it
Tries them
out.
all. Well, you can
Meanwhile,
hear him
Marcellus is
screaming.
getting butt pounded, the
Yeah,
whole
and you
time.
can hear it. Oh my God, you can hear it. You're like, bro, if you
It's
move
like,
faster, you could
dude.
maybe stop this.
And then he lands on the samurai sword, and you get the slash, and then he turns around, just the like iconic, "Yah," no
Yes.
look. Butch killing Vincent at the with he got the Pop Tarts in there, and then
His own gun.
that's what I was gonna ask is like, what's up with Vincent's like bowels, man? This guy has to shit constantly, it's like that, and that
I
led
mean,
to his death. He has to
I
shit
think
in the
that's actually the
restaurant.
opposite with heroin. I think heroin, just like opioids or
Constipation,
whatever.
constipate.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe he's always going to the bathroom because he's really trying to get
Maybe
it
he's like
done.
really into that book. I don't know what book he was reading, but he every
I
time he went
guess
to
like
the
that could be it. It could be the constipation why he's always in there for too long.
yeah.
Because if he was just going in there and going to the bathroom, he might not have, taken such his sweet ass time and come out at
Yeah.
the wrong time.
And I just love like they have that confrontation at the beginning where he's like, "You got a problem, friend?
Yep.
I'm not your friend, Kimosabi or whatever he calls
Yes. Yes.
him." And then that's confirmed that after that happens, Butch is the one that keys his car because they're doing some time jumping shit. So that
Totally. Yeah, that
so
makes perfect
so
sense. Yep.
Travolta rubbed him the wrong way. And then when Butch leaves the bar, he keys his car, and then that's when we get that
You
comment.
don't
Don't
mess with another man's vehicle.
yeah. And then number one had to be Marvin. I shot Marvin in the face, man.
The greatest. It is the greatest. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Travolta said that he even like changed that line. It was supposed to be like I blew his head off or something. And he's like, if I deliver this line like this, it would be like I stepped on his toes. It'd be funny,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
I
It'll
shot
be
Marvin in the face,
I didn't mean to. Gun just
Yeah.
went off.
You must have went over a bump or something.
Yes.
So good. And we haven't talked about his hair too, but iconic
It's
ponytail.
perfect. He's wearing the Michael Madsen, right? He's of course wearing that costume design, and it is so good. But yeah, similar kills for me too. Like Travolta's gun is so cool, and it's like he obviously has to have this much harder, more automatic weapon because he's doing these kills on his own now. Because as we'll see in the next scene, Samuel L. has totally retired, so he's got to have a little bit more power. But he leaves it out, and it works against him. So
Yeah.
sadly, that doesn't happen. And of course, Marvin is the greatest kill of this movie,
Yeah,
just every
definitely.
time, the best. But another kill that always stands out to
I don't
me is
believe
when
it.
they're first in the apartment with those guys who have the briefcase, when he kills the flock of seagulls dude, because it
Oh
kind of
yeah.
comes out of nowhere. And at first, he's like playing in a way where you're like, he's not really that maniacal. Like he is more smooth. He's the talker. Maybe Travolta is the one who like is the enforcer here. And then he just like pops that dude out of nowhere, and you're like, no, Travolta's like
Yeah.
here just to like watch the edges.
Mhm.
Samuel L. is the real skilled hitman.
They also kill Brett. We didn't mention that one, but that's when both
Yeah,
of
big
them get
brain
on the
Brett, he's out.
action, and it kind of that's another theory online that the little flashes of orange are like what's ever in the briefcase coming out,
Yes.
and like maybe taking over their bodies or so, making them do that. I don't know.
Or it could
You can
be
look on the internet
signifying the
some
the
weird.
releasing of like their souls, if you believe inside the
Yeah,
briefcase is a soul.
there you
Um,
go.
Could be, right? I
I
don't
don't know.
know. But yeah, the kills are, they're very memorable, every single one of them. All right, that takes us to our next segment called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we talk about the film's imperfections, decide whether they're fatal hits or just minor flesh wounds. What do you got?
I didn't really have many.
Me
My
neither.
biggest
Yeah.
gripe with rewatching these movies is it's always like pretty cringe when the dialogue is like hella racist, because I know
Yeah.
these are real people, and he always chooses to write like the scum of the earth
Yeah.
when the people who are saying these
It's
things.
legit everybody though. Like I can only
Yeah.
think of like maybe the wolf, but like even like
Even he, I feel
I
like,
was
says
sup-
something.
I was surprised that like even like the Tim Roth, I'm like I don't remember him being bad, and then he's like goes in on like Jewish banking and stuff. I'm like, oh God,
Yes.
everybody.
Yeah, every person is racist in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. And it does feel like QT is always looking for a pass to use the N-word somehow. So I
Yeah.
don't
It's
love
it's
that,
it's extra
but
weird because he's the one saying it. I feel like I can
I
kind
mean,
of
he has
defend.
a lot of his characters say it too.
But
More
I
than
can
one dude
defend,
says
like,
it.
from a fictional standpoint, you're writing characters, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
and you
right.
should be able to write whatever you wanna write, and then you cast yourself and you say it, and,
Ugh,
like, that's the one where I kinda, like, I
it
really
gets a
can't
little
defend that
awkward.
one. I can't
Yeah.
defend that one, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But other than that, I think the only other like silly question I have is like, why does Marcellus ask all of his friends to always take his wife out? Like that, I just feel
Yeah,
like that is like a recipe for disaster.
yeah,
So I'm always curious about that.
yeah. I love the way that Travolta, like, brings that up too in that restaurant scene, like, "Yeah, he fell out of a window." It's like, that's one way to say it. Another way to say
Yes, yes.
another way to say it is that he was thrown out.
Another way to say it is because of something you
You
did.
did, yeah. Yeah, mines are small too. Mia definitely draws a rectangle instead of a square. She goes like this. And like even like the
That's right,
little
not
like
even.
lines, the lines that they draw is a rectangle. I just wish
Let's be
they could
real.
have fixed that
Point it
either
out.
either in post or they could have done another take. I don't know.
Point it out.
It's too
Yes.
simple. And then there was a deleted scene Sam Jackson talked about, which I thought would have been cool. It's not really like a flaw, but like he says that in the ending diner scene that there was supposed to be a shot where Marcellus shoots Tim Roth's character and Amanda Plummer's character, and then like it cuts back to him, and it's like he didn't do that, but that was like what the
Oh, like he
previous
could have
version of
of him
Marcellus
would
would
have
have
done.
done. And Sam
Got it.
Jackson's like, he's like, I'm always he brought it up like twice on the special features. He's like, man, that was in the script, and Tarantino's like, I don't want to shoot that because if we shoot it, I'm gonna keep it in. And Sam Jackson's like, yeah, man, that would be cool. Would have been a good deleted scene or something at least.
I
I
hear you.
don't know. Which brings us to our last segment, Game Over, man.
What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
So good. And finally, this is where we'll rate the film out of 5 wristwatches. What do you give this one?
I'm gonna go 4. I know that's probably like blasphemy to some people, but it's like it's hard to separate that, like, because this is such an important film for indie cinema, Quentin Tarantino's career. But I just think he's gone on to do better films. Films I enjoy more. Once you know the dialogue and things, it becomes a little tougher for me to like really be invested in the characters and the action, if I'm being honest. But
Okay.
there are certain sequences, like we mentioned, that I do go back to that I just love, like the Jackrabbit Slim sequence, the needle sequence, and when the wolf comes in. Those are like the ones I look forward to. Some of
Exactly.
Butch's stuff. But yeah, what about you?
I will give it a 5
Yeah.
because I agree, even though, he goes on to make, to continue to peak what his talent is capable of. There's just nothing that quite matches revisiting this movie to me, kind of like the authenticity of it. I love, this is like 15-ish years before I'll even move to LA, and I just like love seeing all of these locations and being like, yeah, man, like
Yeah.
movies like this are the reason I was like, I'm going,
Yeah.
and it's just so good, and it's
Just
so
kind of
early in his
timeless in
career.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so titular in that way too. So I'm just sort of like, I love this movie. Even for the pieces that make me cringe, or I'm like, holy shit, that Gimp scene there's nothing else like it.
Yeah.
It's still worth it. So yeah, I gotta go a hard 5 on this one.
Hell yeah. All right. I think that about wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
Get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
So you never miss a rep. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_Minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Next week, we'll be covering Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then.
I just thought it was some cold-blooded shit to say to a motherfucker before I popped a cap in his ass.